What's up?
Hey, sorry, my bad. Yep, I'm here. Let me send the doc real quick. Just let me make sure it's the right.
Give me a second. I'm going to change some audio settings on my end.
Sounds good. Let's see.
All right, can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Cool. Arush, is it cool if I record the round?
Yeah, that's fine.
Sick.
Awesome. I just sent the doc, so let me know when everyone gets it.
Wait, sorry, did you say something? I just realized my speakers weren't working.
Oh, good. I just sent the doc. That's all I said.
Cool. Give me a second to get it open. All right, I'm good.
Awesome. Mohammed, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Awesome. Sorry, I forgot to get a timer. I'll give you 1 second. In that case, I'll start. Over USA AI Adventure Selective Law Prolife for Tier Genesis and Extinction Domain changes to collaborative AI development pipeline team. Easily provided W's will be used against Western companies, allowing the communities for use for genocide application for audio development, use machine learning advantage in the battlefield, opens up some of the scenarios for advanced AI as a more social catastrophic failures, it potentially weapons that AI needs to develop needs to be open, collaborative, most likely no connects serious problems with the AI since Franco and AI race. If the United States switch into AI advantage, other countries can certainly redouble down US military and unsafe AI development risks extinction children and arms are 14. News goes over the advanced AI present non-controversial human decision outcomes appear benevolently to cause great harm and powerful positions are supposed to be not prevent. Caution receipts might be risk of competitive advantage to deterrence means that the threat of nuclear power is not overwhelming by AI systems would outlive humanity. AI systems like lack for justice, contributing more value, identities, happiness, even catastrophic nuclear war pandemic, even such as allow a few survivors while AIs would likely not to clarify. None of the above looks by framework. Next is framework. The next is constituent first. A1 is motivational theory describing what is constituent agent. I got actions. First one cannot operate when means the agent. Second, solves the internal external paradox, avoids the subject of agents' internal motives by internally committing to them to participate in activity the necessity of double deniable external positions. For example, we can understand the point of trying to checkmate a king during a chess game simply because it is a constituent aim of the game. Next, humans are rational creatures that are subject to reason and affect. One reason is inherent in this capable. We're capable of justifying judgments. Other reason judgments are limited by laws. The difference between the possible justified entities. Second is that affect is inherent. Humans are sensible organisms. If I touch a so first I will affectively feel pain and rationally see the cause subjects governed by affect reason. And this tends to be sensible to reason because the problem the application of reasoning is where God's existence a priori. If you're rather age is subject to empirical desires, essentially allows the possibility of the ability to take an anti-rational maximum indicator principle. Additionally, this prescribes some agents practicality because a practical reason not accidentally conditionally active reason but by virtue of their status as a practical reason. The reason is something we can observe and requires knowledge from the essay. The solution is the ethical community critiques, particularly evils in order to consist of universal. What we lack is agents, practical legibility, apply reason not to know we have it. Instead, judgment properties for reason, the universal and subjective events, and focus on the community practical research and the ethical community to recognize other agents as self-ledger. Their status is reasoning agents to recognize other agents as such and respectability act on their actions. Gosh. Consciousness is conscious of oneself, self-view, constitute ethical community through acknowledgement of human visions, which allows us to overcome evil by taking responsibility for activities, actively overcoming evil. Have the idea of ethical life to actualize the idea of ethical life, permeate with a particular, not containing the idea of pure reason. Reconcile ethical life belongs to the very idea of pure reason, objectively conceived of self-protection into ethical communities. Thus, the same role thus consists of the ethical community for the absolute, but based on a community of research that engaged in a practice of self-critique in order to negate evil. Any indicts and standard can be self-critique, critique themselves, or revise themselves. This is my role as best for the space to appeal to exclude just a previous obligation to responsibility to better for everyone, which will only for contextualize accessibly, always consider three norms. It matters to peace and minor same engagement, which kills value. We prefer additionally one is binding. This one my fairly non-arbitrary basis that this main norm of the others in ethical community recognize such are also needing brand 99. To be self is to recognize that by those one recognize. So it's up to me whoever recognizes good just players, not up to me whether those players recognize me as a good player. This gives a candidate authority to constitute community by recognizing individuals as members, but having a normal status is social. The self-community achieve their status only as a result of reciprocal recognition. Recognize that there's in effect inside the community will find a common starship between the reciprocal recognition and the relations between the concept of universal superiors. Two is rule following paradox. A so B if the question we follow the rules and if eventually interprets some basis assumption everything justification. B rules are arbitrary. The agent can conform unique interpretation understanding which makes them possible to verify a violation. The ethical community itself since we realize realize what it means to follow rules, to pursue the common good, to look at the community interpretation rule, not something universal. So the third is inescapability. Discussing ethical requires a method to critiquing values such as ethical consistency, ethical community, which is the ethical community engages parts of self-praise in order to overcome evils, which explains any critical structure. Throughout the question making authority makes a judgment contesting what for improves the thesis. 4 is performative. Making a claim with a structure show that he requires a process determines the structure activity in a way that we think is good. But this presupposes an ethical value such as structure. The structure of C, the ethical community engages the process of self-praise in order to overcome and inhibit evils, which includes any critical structure with the method making authority make judgment. And item from the resolution principle process the arrest of substantive prevent abuse. Then check assuming interrupt the item for the C is an ethical act. Only conditions make a ban as their picks and C based on against the negative from adjective section 2 defining against the general principle loss for exception. Next is offense. Laws of recent non-skilling active racing image deciding laws based on algorithm instance misrecognition. Anderson 2020. Anderson 2020. Who's always said and possibly put the specialized with ones from military power, the other armies competitive and competitive powers who can to rely on algorithms are the less considered valuable beautiful conflicts that loss can be employed. I think the worth of defining population those who given those who are not non-group life that can be more kids and never lived and never come to life. We see the division of the goal from the perspective of those who wage war in order to realize sort of communities and defend them because the left so their team means taking those out of bear might have we perceive the value of humanity, taking consideration there's potential risk transferring average and we've already witnessed the point of view of these. Some states will have capability to develop by less increasing asymmetric capabilities and worse reducing risk and increasing advanced authority killings and regional and international instability and lethal assaults are unlocked the ability to reflect on other issues empathize with first second follow freedom and code. This just reflects the unconditional worth of humanity. FAF 19. Respect for persons entails the limiting knowledge of person, including enemy and knowledge of the personhood is not necessarily within knowledge that is as after another person requires the reason the actors give for any act that affects another taking the respect owed to the particular pandemic life decisions absolute relationship is just disrespect for status human beings considered as non-moral agents post moral consequences and moral agents. It will not only empathize and employ them the ability to interact the ability to interact essential to treating others morally human ability to establish what is relevant as part of the judicial process rather than before and create what creates space for sentiments wrong subject life decisions based on machine judgments. What distinguishes murder from justified killing only by its moral and emotional responses under V. One here, three, which after there's a reason to drop the B, I can be just like the arguments A, the one is long form, it's not enough time to wait for substance B. I need to drop the other can be abuse, unfortunately, there's more time that I can afford just getting back to you. Like, let's see, I need the R because the theory should be 2 ways, or real sets in our offense. We should in a minute, this few 5 which is worth 650 G, is and 2 known 2 R of these theory frame. We should go with collapse theory and the long script I couldn't predict. And there's the justification was there when I made the choice. That's a stress, that's stress. It's like the presumption is from A. We always just default assuming the true and false. To prove to us others can be almost impossible to get any criminal because the interpretive proof is to show truth B. If agents are reflecting every action taken justify was a good one, you never be able to take action because justify actions that are morally true. I drink you watch not morally right. If I justify action every time I decide I'm going to course of action, every be able to make decisions. And third is that mutual recognition of the actually just skip that. Fourth utils fatal. First the one is the problem to action figure sorting. The problem to action considers the method of principle connected to deductively first contingent or considered inductively. Working the reliable past because that would like the question by assuming what the order is be proved. 2 takes their offensive predicting using past experience. Second is predictions positive action to dominant of disaster something that free supply seas to birth like eventually cause my seas performed a hurricane kill thousands. There's agriculture it's possible pain is incommunicable 5 headaches and migraine can be crazy. I don't know how it feels for you versus me or the same versus different meaning weighing consequences is arbitrary. I'll be good for cross. Just give me 1 sec to get a drink of water.
You good?
I'm good.
So you only read problem of induction, right?
I read prediction is impossible and then aggregate pleasure is also impossible too. So you
didn't read number 4?
I didn't read number 4.
Cool. Let's see the util advantage. This just sort of says AI is bad. Why does this mean lethal autonomous weapons are bad?
So like the fact that the United States is like AI is developing at a rapid rate increases the likelihood of AI-enabled lethal autonomous weapons, and lethal autonomous weapons like cause bad things. And it makes a specific claim of how to ban is key to create a collaborative AI environment. So like it reduces the use of like harmful AI in general, which is probably pretty good, as according to the impact.
What? Okay. Your motivation argument on the meta ethic, it just sort of says like constitutive. We have to have something that's constitutive of the agent to guide action. But if I'm an agent and I know what like makes me an agent, why does that mean that I know how to act?
The argument is that you can't opt out of it, right? If it's some external imposition, it's so easy to opt out of it by just saying, okay, why do I even care about this, right? But if it's something constitutive to the agent, it's impossible to opt out. You cannot opt out of what makes you an agent.
What constitutes an agent?
What constitutes an agent? According to the framework, rationality, so reason and affect.
Okay, so, all right, let's see. The offense, how do laws like increase anonymous killings? Are they not still tied to like a country or an operator or something like that?
Well, the argument is so if the argument is that it renders so like if you can think about this kind of like Butler, it's a little bit different, but you can think of this like kind of like Butler, right? If you don't take your if you render lives anonymous by killing them with like an quote unquote an anonymous weapon, right? Like you're just deploying random drones to just like kill random drones to just kill a person, right? Which is not like an act of like which is an act of misrecognition because you're just like you're just like looking at lives as like numbers and not like actual people.
Don't we do that anyways?
The argument is specific to lethal autonomous weapons. Do you want me to?
Okay, so isn't this just a drop in the bucket then? Because the way like the media reports how many people are getting killed for coronavirus, that's a ton of like just random numbers. They're all anonymous people.
Yeah.
The way people are getting killed in Afghanistan, those are just random numbers. Why does this?
So the argument specific to lethal autonomous weapons. Like sure, some lethal autonomous weapons are tied to a country.
So
But the card makes a can I finish? The card makes a specific claim about lethal autonomous weapons because lethal autonomous weapons can be used in an anonymous way, right? At least if it's a person, right? The person is like definitively tied to like a country, but a lethal autonomous weapon is literally just a drone that can be controlled remotely. It's impossible to verify the country of origin.
If the United States launches a drone, is that not the United States' drone?
Right, but the argument is the potential for anonymity, right? How do you know it's the United States drone? If the United States doesn't even say anything, that if the United States says, "Oh, there's a drone, but we're not going to claim it as ours," right? The drone is effectively anonymous. That's the argument. But if a U.S. military soldier killed a civilian, right, that is at least tied to the United States because the soldier is from the United States.
Okay. I'll run for it. Okay, I use 125. That's quick math. 335 left. All right, I'll send it out. I'll do the order once I send it. All right, it's sent. Let me know when y'all have it. Order is going to be 3, then case. Case is framework, util, advantage, offense.
I just got to give me 1 second.
Yep.
All right, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good to go too.
I think my word is crashed. Okay, no, we're good. All right. Everyone's good, you said? Sick. First off, it's utility. The meta ethic is consistent due to the person prefer one non-natural moral facts or epistemically inaccessible path. 7. The physical facts are due to natural causes and moral facts. 5 sides the moral facts can never make any difference on what happens in the physical world. This has epistemological consequences. Knowledge is mediated by physical processes involving our sense and cognitive systems of moral facts and nonsense of the physical world, and we can't have any knowledge of them. Second, binding this only pursuing pleasure and avoiding being motivated actions and actual system of ethics is anything intrinsic that dictated to be followed. Chemical and biological responses to certain experiences provide objective marks of pleasure and pain. All maximizing examples, logical ethical principles are verifiable. Third, something happens 100 times, you know, happening again because the probability mathematical analysis only empirical processes and also accurate to make deductive predictions. Decision makers have used natural systems and grounded in empirical science and facts. All the more those can't be reliably used. That's the genesis maximizing expected utility. To clarify, this refers to maximizing life. Prefer 1. Pleasure and pain is intrinsically valuable. Mode 16. Pleasure is involved with something undeniably about pleasure. As pleasure is or how we treat those every day, but asking what if pleasure is good for the discussion reaching awkward and pleasure is not good for anything further. Pleasure we reach the end of the line. So there's no affirmation for states once you know 5. Unlike individual governments always use regulating third parties when they authorize private action is not feasible. The distinction between authorized and unauthorized action becomes obscure when the government formally favors private action but do not fully discourage it. Third, substitutability and the consequential explains necessary enablers and non 19. A more reason is consequential if the reason depends on the consequence. A more reason is non-consequential if the reason depends on some property that the act has. If I promise to mow the grass, there's a moral reason to mow constituted by my promise. However, even if I cannot mow the grass without starting my mower, it still will not follow that I have any reason to start my mower. Moral theory cannot explain substitutability. Claims that properties provide moral reasons. Fourth, the essential relevant given uncomfortable moral uncertainty. 15. Reason and central is the most friendly of the whole world. So many people exist in the future with responsibilities. As the well-being of these possible people only given 0.001% much weight. We should also gain moral uncertainty even from essential well-being. Natural moral uncertainty, reducing essential risk is one of the world unknowingly possible moral views converge that we should try to save the world. Fifth, phenomenal introspection is the most epistemic reliable historical moral discriminant internal consensus of morality. Just question of race, gender, class, religion, etc. The fallibility of non-observational based ethics. Introspection means that we value happiness. We can determine that we each value just like in a lemons illness. We can make those judgments about happiness. 6, use epistemic philosophy providing the framework to be 8 when substantively true since maximizes the probability of achieving that most moral value. Being a framework acts as mitigation. Their impact of the strength of mitigation is contingent. B point clash distance that device going all in for framework trees that we get the ideal balance between topic and feel it's important to talk about and solve often. 7th, reject calculates their period. They're empirically denied because we use utility policy and actual policy making all the time. 2nd, the function lives that everyone knows are. No, 8th, nothing in the NC triggers presumption permissibility, but they should negate there's no way to know that we can always presume something to be true. 9th, usual works when induction fails in correct. I can reasonably predict the sun is going to rise outside my house in a few hours. Even predictions work when we reasonably sure that something is correct. Or we don't need to aggregate pleasures. How many people die? That's the point of the hedonism. That's the point of the hedonism framework. No one error theory because it incentivizes a new 2 error response against 2 and which means that there because of a lack of 3 there's no way for me to ever be able to respond to it. Means that moment literally has to flip a coin. Second off, states ought to one announce that the use of weapons not controlled by humans violates international humanitarian laws. The settled matter of customary international law. Second, announce that this action is taken pursuant to opinion of years and that non-compliance is in violation of international law. Third, building comply not using lethal times of the manner inconsistent with populations. The Canada then picks up plans to attempt to ban through a treaty which causes cheating, regulating use to IHL falls better with the firm paying solvency. Match 15. Killer once had led some organizations to call for an IRA ban prohibiting development, production, use ban would be unworkable in practice. The temptation for states to choose obvious given the sensitive taxation made of entry and the develop autonomous substance class example prisoners in London why would not cooperate as technology becomes more affordable. It's only a matter of time. Advanced in cyber tech and mean more people will never have access to dissemination of open source software. It makes sense more possible to expand on undermine more realistic alternative to regulate use through IHL and said agree on acceptable standards of conduct and it can be normal means in international treaty absence investigation default to normal means evidence of predictable already 16. States parties to the conventional conventional weapons will convene for the treaties for the review conference to address lethal atomic substances. The CCWC have 3 legal and formal meetings. This formal body compels states to create a legally binding prohibition on fully atomic substances. Third, treaties and CIL skip the third guard. Soft laws assault better than the affirmative. Too late for a ban. The technology is certainly the regulating use involved disaster 19. Ban and regulate tech development might already progress too far to implement full ban autonomy in the new problematic per se because defensive weapons systems such as missile defense already has features. EU lawmakers are looking for ways to impose limits and standards. There should be similar kind of agreement established laws as with these chemical weapons branding users. That's where I start off. Initial Iran talks have been successful, but a quick rejoining is necessary to prevent failure to solve it. 21. Iran and world powers held talks arriving at JCPOA. Initial steps were very positive and continue if the US does not quickly rejoin real possibility. Iran will proceed with its nuclear enrichment program. 1. Arms control for its trade off of diplomatic focus and capital for the team. Arms control is an opportunity cost. Leaders only have so much time, energy, and capital available in policy objectives seeking. Arms control means that no one doesn't have to work so hard on other initiatives. It might be wise to just spend finite reserves and not diplomatic capital on other things one could do without time, energy, and political capital on policy front. Second, vague parameters and disputes over loopholes and violations can leave if everyone initially agrees it's a vacuum of diplomatic bandwidth. Beer 17. Obligations of arms control must be sufficiently precise to ensure access and recognize that defection, elaborate monitoring, policing, and verification have little value without obligations. System commitments framed by accepted legal discourse discourages auto interpretation. The lack of precision gives rise to indeterminate standards and makes it easier to justify non-compliance. Lack of precision may result in tension that states assert restrictive interpretations and diplomatic breakdown causes nuclear war. Now, key. Alan said 20. After the use pulled out of Iran and Syria makes direct conflict likely, the chances of increasing strong pulled out of the JCPOA to prevent convergence in Iran have escalated on Yahoo's closer to carrying out a unilateral strike on Iran. Cut the card at Iran and extinction nuclear winter crude oil fly smoke covers the world sign and rule 17. Nuclear winter probably initiate mass extinction. The world commander and arsenal to the Russia, US and Russia have at least 2 billion tons of common scientists. Large scale nuclear wars estimates were catastrophic. The scoring season be shortened by 100 days for 3 years. A 1 to 5 billion ton war would not be survivable. Cut the card at survivable. The case page starting on the framework. One, the affirmative clause is consequential, even if not being constituted is a bad thing, even when we know something bad is happening, if we look at an action's consequences, it means that we evaluate consequences first. Second, extension is the worst possible impact on the framework too, because the worst violation of constitutivism is that none of us will exist in the future, which means that none of us can ever have anything constitutive of an agent. On the line, on the meta-ethic one, motivation, we can't actively know what the agent is, we need to know why the agent acts, which only so that's second internalism that happens anyways. A priori reasoning is impossible. Ultimate principles are incoherent because perceptions are only derived from sensation or from reflection. Second, affect is inherent. The argument folds negative because it approves pain, pleasure, outweigh. Third, the application of reason assumes agency, but that's not possible. We'll get that in the second. Fourth, bindingness, we turn it. Their framework is arbitrary. Though what the hell is constitutivism? There's no bright line. Fourth, rule failing assumes schmagency. Assumes that there's no schmagency, but when there is, yes, schmagency. Next, escapability. We can escape agency. That's a schmagency objection. The performativity argument. They don't engage in a criticism. They don't engage in a criticism. Engage in a criticism, which means that they don't have performativity offense. Counterclaims negated proof an opportunity cost of plan, which means that we have to be able to read them. They do disprove some part of the affirmative. That's called a disad or roost frame. The constitutivism fails from agency objection. The alcohol. Agency do not care about their qualifications. They can be happy being spacious, non-agents, like the thing constitutive agency, but are similar to agents. When corresponding applies to agents who have to say, oh, why should I care about this category compared to with otherwise wouldn't count as an agent? The second starts with that. So what is it to her if she qualifies as an agent or not? The practical reasons is objectivity, development, also secure will not reach the person who's happy being a stranger rather than an agent. The status of being constitutive agency is not suffice for normatively non-arbitrary status. They imagine the child asking why he mustn't pay, and there can be no more obligations rationally binding. Actually, no, skip that part. The offense really quick. Holy shit, this often the stupid ones to drop in the bucket. We anonymize numbers all the time. Coronavirus, Afghanistan war, they don't solve anything in terms of impact. Which means that we went on episodic modesty. Second, laws are still tied to a state. They're still the United States or Russia's laws are still the terrorist laws, which is very obviously no. Third, we don't empathize before a strike. That's the point of war. There's no empathy in soldiers. The utility advantage. New after voting feels critical thing because it prioritizes new good and creates a model debate with a racial margins where debaters incentivize to find the most obscure assets with wild framings that are substantiated by topic literature. Second, the absence of solid about AI being bad now by limiting laws solves their developments and inevitable equilibriums are only hope of 18. Autonomous life is almost stable equilibrium that residual about possibility of armed conflict, mutually shared AI destruction, mutually shared destruction is the game theory concept that is explain how the Cold War remained cold, that one's adversary will swamp nuclear destruction, nuclear weapons, then equilibrium to deterrence. How the part at deterrence. I'm good whenever.
All right, sounds good. You're good for cross?
Yep. You want to mark off?
Yeah, that'd be great. Can you send it to me like after cross though?
Yeah, I'll send it.
Awesome. I'll start now. What was the standard in new Webster voting issue? Like, what was the reason?
Sure. It sort of incentivizes the race to the margins in which you're incentivized to find like the most obscure affirmatives with wild framings instead of affirmatives that are actually substantiated by the topic literature. Like this app is not substantiated by the topic literature.
That sounds good. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. So somewhere in the middle, you said like that's called a disad, Arush, but I didn't hear what you said before that. So like, what argument were you referring to?
The counterclaims negate argument because it proves an opportunity cost of plan with a disad alongside it. We have to be able to read them because it proves an opportunity cost.
Isn't the counterclaim just a pick though? Oh no, actually, never mind. That's all good.
These are picks and counterclaims and negates. So
that's all. Anyway. That's all good. Let's talk about the new 2AR. So I don't get 1AR theory because it incentivizes new 2AR responses. That was the only argument.
Sure. The argument is that it forces Momo to flip a coin because there's no way for him to know what the argument is going to be. Because the 2AR is going to essentially have a argument.
That's all I need. What was the reason my framework collapses? Because all I heard was that you just look at consequences. Like
sure. So the framework still requires an evaluation of consequences of what it means to be constitutive, which means that we still have to evaluate consequences even in the world of the framework.
Why is that true?
You said this in cross-sex and in the framework.
Literally, okay, that's fine. Let's talk about the pain and pleasure. So why does the existence of pain and pleasure mean that we ought to maximize it?
I don't follow.
You said that pain and pleasure exist, and we all feel pain and pleasure. That's totally cool. Why does it mean that we ought to maximize it?
That's a Moan evidence that it's intrinsically valuable, but even so, the standard text was specific to maximizing.
So I get it's the Moan evidence that we all feel pain and pleasure, right? We like pleasure. Why does it mean we ought to maximize it? Like where is the imperative?
It releases a neurotoxin in our brain that makes us want to do more stuff. It makes us quote unquote.
But why is that like ethically good, right? If we're trying to talk about moral obligations, where do you derive a moral obligation from the existence of pain and pleasure? I
don't follow. This seems like the wrong question.
That's fine. That's totally fine. Explain the substitutability argument.
Sure. The argument is, say I want you to mow my lawn. There's a few steps that you have to do. First, you have to go to my shed. You have to take out the lawnmower. Then you have to fill up the lawnmower with however the hell lawnmowers are filled up. Then you have to start the lawnmower. All of these things are simple steps that it takes called necessary enablers in order for you to be able to get to the point of mowing my lawn. Because mowing my lawn is not one action, but rather a culmination of multiple different actions that you have to undertake. If you're not looking at the consequence, which is I probably pay you $10 for mowing my lawn, then there's no reason you have to go to my shed, unlock my shed, take out my mower, fill up my mower with fuel. None of that is necessary.
That's all I need. Yeah. Did you make any reason why the DSAD links to the AC framework?
Yes, we said that this extension is still bad. It's the worst
Okay.
impact on framework 2.
That sounds good. That sounds good. What was your response to the aggregate pleasure is impossible in the utils fake till part?
Sure. I said, well, so first I said, no, we can be reasonably sure because of how governments have been able to aggregate in the past since we've denied. Second, we're only measuring like how many people die. That's the framework we said to clarify. It means maximizing life, which means that it's very much a concrete bright line, like as opposed to constitutivism. No one knows what the bright line for constitutivism is.
That sounds good. Okay, so I'll take prep, but before I do, are we doing 4 or 5 minutes?
I'd assume 5.
Okay, sounds good. Mohammed, are you okay with that? 5 minutes? Okay. Great. Give me 1 sec to open the doc. Like my computer's spazzing, but as soon as I do that, I will.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention I sent the doc.
Yeah, I just got it. But it's like, okay, wait, let me just don't do this. Okay, let's see. It's opening. It's giving me like a little spinny thing. Give me 1 sec. Yeah, it's open. All right, spectacular. I will take prep now. Real quick, what's the status of the counterplan?
Conditional.
Conditional? Oh, I'm good. So I use 310. Write that down. The order is just going to be AC top down, NC top down. So I'm not going to go for the usual stuff, but like it will be AC. So AC is going to be really quickly on the framework, then offense, then back. Okay, that's going to be weird, but really quickly in like the framing, like rolled about stuff, then offense, then back to the framework, just like top down, and then NC top down. Wait, yeah. I will signpost. Yeah.
When you say NC top down, I'm assuming you mean util, counterclaim, dissent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Or well, actually, is there a doc?
No.
Cool.
Sorry. My neck is just okay. Is everyone good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Awesome. In that case, I'll start. As soon as I get the doc. Sorry, give me 1 second. I will start. Nope, I just lied. Okay, great. I'll start. The debate is already over. They can see the role value I was consistency with the ethical me, and they can see the previous reason why my role value comes for 6. And the reason why my role value is the best fit in space will feel like the judge has a pre-fee obligation endorsements the motivation being good for average, which only way for contextualized accessibility, always all of their norms, including their like fairness and include the fairness thing for voting jargon, since other norms that enforce PUC's mergers can never engage in which kills value. This is what's very clear in the 1EC, which is this is a pre-fee reason for my role, irrespective of any framework index. Even if the framework index are correct, right? I'm going to my role is good for debate in a broader sense, even if it's not a great argument, just 100% conceded. That means that you have to validate roll about first. Now let's go to the office right now. I'll really quickly extend I'm just going to go for the intercept. See, misunderstood the intercept. The first one of the intercepts was the potentiality for anonymity. The fact that lethal toss weapons can be anonymous, or people can use lethal toss weapons to not anonymously kill people is uniquely bad because it's an instance of misrecognition. But the second, which they didn't let me explain, which is the fact that lethal toss weapons are using algorithms to determine who lives and who lies. That is an act of moral distancing because you're not actually having a person do it. You're having an algorithm determine who lives and who lives and who dies, which doesn't allow you which doesn't allow you to respect the other people, which doesn't allow you to respect and recognize other people, which is probably really bad. You can just literally vote F right here. I'm winning my roll, but I'm winning at least a risk of offense under my roll, but none of their offense even matters. I'm winning a pre-fit reason why my roll that comes first. Even if you don't buy, I'll still win the framework. Go to the framework right now. For 6 in the meta constitution, I'm gonna go for the second one, the internal and external characteristics, which means only my meta constituent explain things without relying on arbitrary external characteristics. The purpose of chess is distracting because it's a constituent that makes specifics in the context of the anti-affirm, because the anti-affirm uses something external like pain and pleasure. But there's no reason why the existence of pain and pleasure means that we ought to like consistently maximize. I'll address this I'll make the same argument on their frame, but they don't explain a single reason why how you can derive like an imperative from an addictive, right? The existence of pain and pleasure means that we are actually we have to constantly act in the purpose constantly act to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. That has not been that just was not explained. The only other argument they made was that my framework just collapses. And they also just made a bunch of random assertions that you should just opt out of agency. I'll respond to the agency objection a little bit later. You can't just opt out of agency because they misunderstood what constitutive is, right? The AC framework is making a claim about what agents are and then drawing a moral premise from that, right? Moral premise from it. It's making a general claim about how you misact. Also, overview all their arguments. A lot of them are just assertions. They just assert that it collapses but just it's not explained. I feel like this extinction bad stuff. First, this definitely presumes consequential. First, it presumes that we can use consequential. We can even evaluate consequences. And second, it also presumes that we can derive a moral obligation from moral obligations from a consequence. Which would say their extinction arguments definitely don't matter. Quickly on this agency objection. This just doesn't apply. First, they're also the AC is making a claim about how humans are constitutively, right? This isn't like humans are internally have like practical reasons. The argument is that humans are both rational. Humans are rational, which means you're affected by both reason and affect, which definitely takes us that. Even if you don't buy subs, I'll go for this performativity arc. This argument comes before all of the framework arguments because they've already conceded to my framework by entering into the space. To make it clear with the structure shape of the activity requires a process determined structurally activity in the way we think it's good. But this presupposes a method that can validate such a structure, which means it must be an ethical community since it engages the process of self-criticism. Also, none of their index play because they can see the arguments since the community is constantly self-critiquing. That means that any index can stand to be solved because the community can just critique themselves to solve the index. Now let's go to the util framework. Yeah. On the method of empiricism, first on the method for overview. First the hijack the pure hedonism of judgments, returns some beauty out of pure pleasure reasons, guiding him the least happiness, the implication that A the anti equals the AC can follow community self-motivating B, and then the best way of maximizing pleasure and B the anti framework employs doesn't come from the dual nature of humanity. Quickly, I'm just gonna go straight. I time this out. So just go straight to epistemic modesty. First, epistemic modesty. So people use modesty to indicate whether to be modest in the firm. I use epistemic modesty, not some kind of combination. As long as the risk of offense. The second set, epistemic modesty entirely contradictory. Each moral theory is some set of obligations, but that's it. Like it would be like a doctor prescribing you to different doctors prescribing you to take different medicines, but you just mix all the pills.
What were the arguments you made on epistemic modesty?
It was just 2 arguments. It was like it was
it collapses, and what was the second one?
It doesn't make sense, and I used like the doctor example. So like if you have like it's like 3 different doctors advising you to take a different medicine, but you just like mix all the pills, even though the doctors say that like makes that mixing medicines is bad, right? It just doesn't make sense. You would either use one framework or the other.
Okay. Are there any reasons to reject the team?
No.
What was the hijack on naturalism?
It was just a hijack to util in general. So the argument was that so people aren't pure hedonists. That was the framing. We have like reason and hedonism. It's like a reason and the ability to like, yeah. So the implication is that A, the NC concludes in the AC because following the community is self-motivating as per the framing. And B, the second argument isn't like a hijack. It just says the NC framing isn't complete. Since it doesn't account for how humans are both have the ability to both reason and like be affected.
Okay, that's 335. It's going to be, let's see, the counter plan plus disadd, however you want to flow that. You could just flow it like at the top of the counter plan. Then it's going to be util, then case. Momo, you good?
Yep.
Sick. Two top level formations first. Holy shit, Arusha's been destroyed in this round. I don't care if you think he's winning this roll of battle. That shouldn't matter, even though he isn't. He has first 0 offense of the roll of battle because we picked out the affirmative solvency and implemented a better way to solve, which has the net benefit of the dip cactus set. This is going to outweigh 2 reasons. First, attention outweighs in second on the epistemic modesty argument, because if we're being epistemic modest, we should be happy but negative because there's so much more offense for util than constitutivism, because they've conceded a decant blend. It's also the entirety of the constitutivism of first bit, and they've conceded multiple pieces of defense on the case page. Seems that they have no offense on their roll of battle or under their standard. Even this performativity. So this is a reason why performative offense matters, not a reason why they have performed offense in the first place. We tell you are very comfortable winning negative. The second top of framing issues that they can see that it is the worst impact, regardless of anything pre-fiat or post-fiat, because if we're all dead, we cannot make any decisions as an agent. Everything that makes us constituted to an agent, it burns in the fires along with us when the world is exploding into flames. When the world is exploding into flames because of extinction. That's the that's the second argument that we run the util page, and to refuse to erode us would mean that you're probably just explicitly hacking for the negative. So you should be very comfortable winning. No, it would mean that you're explicitly hacking for the affirmative. You should be very comfortable winning all this. This is a sizable chunk of the 1NC on the case page, which means that you should be very, very comfortable erring heavily negative on this page. We'll first explain the counterplan, how it solves the affirmative and why that means there's zero affirmative offense. The counterplan solves the affirmative because it does the same thing as the affirmative, and that it's a process counterplan. Essentially, what it does is we have all states that announce that using lethal autonomous weapons is bad, and whoever uses them is going to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. That's called soft law. It's what we've done with other weapons like bioweapons, and the CCW was only implemented after things like bioweapons. The reason that bioweapons are no longer used is because we used for new years, and we announced that bioweapons are illegal and violate IHL, which means that obviously it does solve. It does the same thing with lethal autonomous weapons. We announced that they're illegal and they're a violation of international humanitarian rights, which means that it's impossible for lethal autonomous weapons to be used. But the states are going to always have a fear of that they're going to get prosecuted by the rest of the world, which forces no usage. That takes out the problems of things like anonymity and all the contention offense. But then also there's the reason that you have to prefer this over the treaty kind of because that there's not enough time to implement a treaty. It takes too long to implement a treaty. That's the last part that we read on the counterplan. On the counterplan page, that soft law solves better because of time frame. It's too late for a ban because the technology is already here for lethal autonomous weapons. The only way that we can solve it is by regulating use, because there's no way that we're going to be able to prevent people from creating lethal autonomous weapons. The amount of time that's going to take us to create a treaty, we're not going to be able to prevent people from creating lethal autonomous weapons because they'll already have existed, which means that they'll be able to use lethal autonomous weapons in the world of the affirmative, and they won't be able to do that in the world of the counterplan. That means that the counterplan solves better. But independently, there's also the net benefit of the counterplan is also the dip cap disadvantage, because currently the plan causes tension because of things like arms control, forcing a trade-off between diplomatic capital and actual diplomatic focus and actual capital, which means that or the arms control of the affirmative with lethal autonomous weapons is going to be intrinsically bad, and it's going to also be a diplomatic. It's going to create vague parameters like we don't know what a lethal autonomous weapon is specifically defined as right now, which means that all these vague parameters are going to incentivize loopholes and things like circumvention, which is going to vacuum up all the diplomatic bandwidth that we have, which may prevent us from being able to negotiate with Iran which prevents us from being able to negotiate with Iran to denuclearize, and which means that diplomatic breakdown causes nuclear war, which leads to extinction. This was 100% conceded. We need to be very, very comfortable voting negative on a strength of link level, if not on the extinction level and all that stuff, because we're going to smack them on every other part of the debate. Anyways, look, that's game over because we've won that extinction comes first in any sense, even under their frame, because you can't be an agent and you can't have anything constitutive to an agent if we're all dead. The util page. Top level on this hijack about how util have all as hedonism and reason. This is the reason the two. This is just an warrant for epistemic modesty, because yes, hedonism and reason compete side by side, which means that epistemic modesty has to work because both of them have to work side by side. And we can't figure out which one is better. And they say the NC isn't complete. This was quite literally a 3-word argument with no warrant, even when I asked in flex prep, which means that there's no way that they're going to be able to go for this argument. But now they've conceded so many arguments. It's not even funny on why util is good. They conceded binding this that only things like pleasure and pain can motivate us. There's no external system that has anything intrinsic to pleasure and pain which can motivate the government to act. There's no reason constitutivism is going to motivate the government to act. Momo, ask yourself, is constitutivism and knowing what an agent is going to motivate the government to act? Obviously and hopefully not, which means they should err heavily negative. That means that bindingness means that the Papineau evidence about naturalism has to come prior, and that means that we're winning our meta ethic and our syllogism. But anyways, we're going to go independently for the fact that they conceded extinction first. They said that extinction is Zoom's consequentialism, but no, it's a warrant for consequentialism about why there's certain consequences that are intrinsically bad that we have to focus on. If we're all going to die under a consequence, and TOC is a consequence that we have to care about, which means that it is it means it's a warrant. Arush, you've lost on this before to me. Don't do it again. And they say that Zooms that we can derive a moral obligation from extinction. But yes, we can derive a moral obligation from extinction. If we're all going to die, there's a moral reason we should prevent all of us from dying. There's a clear warrant right there, which means that yes, extinction is bad. It has to be bad because of things like future generations. But now on epistemic modesty, they said it collapses because you have to be confident about modesty. But no, we have to be modest about modesty is the argument that we're making. But there's multiple reasons why epistemic modesty is good, which includes substantively true and clash. They've conceded this. They say that the contradictory. This argument was incoherent. They said some doctor example about 3 doctors telling you to take the same pill. That doesn't make sense, or we should explain your arguments. This argument has no warranting. Prefer our actually warranted arguments in the NC. But now, look, the debate is over. They've conceded epistemic modesty. They've conceded distinction comes first in any sense, which means that you have to be very comfortable voting affirmative. But now we're going to go for the agency objection anyways on the case. They've conceded that there's nothing that makes me consider, even if I know what makes me an agent, that doesn't mean that I want to be an agent. If someone walks up to me and says you're an agent because of XYZ reasons, so I'm like, sure, that means I could be an agent, but what if I'm also a schmagent? There's no guarantee of what an agent is versus a schmagent. We'll see that the agency objection is very clear because there's nothing that makes us constitutively an agent. We can always just say that I don't want to be an agent, I want to be a schmagent. The same qualities could apply to an agent. We can still have the same constitutive qualities of a schmagent, but there's no reason that I have to necessarily be an agent. Their only response is that you can't opt out of agency because it's a constitutive feature of what agents are. No, this is circular, and they're just trying to justify their framework with their own framework again, which means that they say that humans are truly a practical reason, but no, that's not how it works. We obviously want that operator reasoning is impossible because ultimate principles are incoherent, which takes us out, which means sees that not all of our antis do apply and takes it out. Now also on the offense page, they can see that's a drop in the bucket. They don't solve anything. We anonymize numbers all the time. We use algorithms for literally everything. Arush can see this. We use algorithms to figure out how many people died from COVID. We use algorithms to figure out how many people have died in Afghanistan. All of these things are drops in the bucket. You're not solving anything. That's game over.
Great. I'll take the rest of prep. Starting now. What was this response to the first reason why epistemic modesty fails?
Sure, we said that you sort of, well, so first it was like a weighing argument, like we weighed our arguments against each other on strength and link and stuff like that. Then we said you cannot collapse, you cannot be confident about modesty. The two are functionally distinct from each other. They don't work. Like you have to be confident about modesty. That's not what epistemic confidence means. You have to have confidence in a framework, not necessarily a framework of evaluating the framework. Epistemic modesty.
Wait, why not? That's just like, it just seems really arbitrary. Like why? Because epistemic modesty is just like,
that's not what epistemic confidence is, Arush.
It literally, okay, now never mind. And it was just strength of link, right?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And also, like, we made an argument about why we don't need epistemic modesty to win regardless.
What was that argument? Was that the
extinction comes first in every instance? You can see this.
Sounds good. Yeah. All right, I'm good. You order, wait, sorry, give me 1 second. All right, oh yeah, so I'm good. We were just gonna be like AC NC, but I'll kind of be like, yeah, it'll be AC like roll the valid offense stuff, and then just like responding to like this extinction stuff and epistemic modesty. I'll signpost where I am. Is everyone, let me just give me 1 second. Is everyone good? Great. Then I'll start. Even though my even though my 1 error was actual garbage, you should simply feel very comfortable voting. For 6 understand this standard role that was consistent with the ethical community. They cold conceded that this was a previous reason. There was a previous reason to prove my role by focusing on mutual recognition and respecting each other within our own debate. Ethical community is the best way to ensure inclusivity. The reason, previous reason without outweighs because it ensures accessibility, make sure that everyone has a voice in debate. So that was cold conceded, which means my role is necessarily the highest thing in the world. I'll respond to all of their arguments. I'll respond to all of this epistemic modesty and this extinction stuff in just a second. But now go to my offense quickly in the intercepts. They cold concede the emotional distancing more. They might have responded to the first one. They completely concede the emotional distance. The intercepts make a very specific claim about how lethal students use algorithms to determine who dies and determine who dies. Their code example makes no sense because the algorithm isn't determining who dies. The algorithm isn't selecting who to kill. The Anderson argument makes a very specific claim about empathy. The fact that there's an algorithm determining who dies and who lives. The fact that there's an algorithm determining who to kill creates emotional distancing, which necessarily leads to disrespect and misrecognition. Even if they have some risk of defense, I made a claim that if I win a risk of offense on this, the fact that no, I'll make a bunch of reasons. I'll give you a bunch of reasons if I have no offense under my role list, which means that if I win a risk of offense under my framework, you should feel very comfortable voting for it. Now let's go to their framework right now. First, I'll start on this Palmer. I did respond to this. They just did not understand they just didn't understand the response. First is that they did not make a single reason why any of their first is that independent. They didn't make a single reason why the counterplan or the disk had links to my framework. Draw a line from the 1 end to the 2, and even just look at your 2 end flow. Nothing in the counterplan and other disks that intrinsically links to my role list. The only reason why it might matter is because of this Palmer evidence. But they concede that you cannot derive a moral imperative. This whole Palmer evidence presumes you can use consequentialism to derive a moral imperative just because we can predict that extinction will happen, right? Just because of the deaths that apparently somehow extinction will happen. There's no reason we can derive a moral obligation from that. We need the consequential framework. We need utilitarianism to determine what we ought to do given that extinction will happen, right? There's no reason absent utilitarianism that we ought to act to maximize lives. They didn't explain that I maximize lives, but since they conceded that my role comes first, they conceded that my standard has to matter around the existence, the fact that there might be extinction in the future. You can't make like a moral judgment about that. There's no reason why it matters under my framework. So you can just drop them from the flow. It definitely doesn't matter. Quickly on this epistemic modesty stuff, they just asserted that my arguments make no sense without even explaining. First of all, they say misunderstand how epistemic modesty works, but epistemic modesty is just a general way of looking at things, right? It doesn't just apply to LD frameworks. There's no reason that means you can extend the first reason, which is that epistemic collapse and stuff. You would use modesty to adjudicate whether to be modest on the framework. You would either use epistemic modesty or not, some kind of combination to the second. Is you can see the doctor example right here. Imagine if you have 3 different doctors to I give you 3 different pills. You wouldn't take all the 3 pills just to be epistemic modest, because what epistemic modest, you have to be absolutely certain in your choice of framework. Here's how you evaluate this round. This Palmer evidence relies on the fact that you can use consequences to derive a moral imperative from the existence of extinction, which means you have to go to the after role of the valid and the offense. They didn't make a single reason why the counterpoint or the set links to my role of that independently. Finally, this modesty argument is nonsense because they conceded a bunch of reasons why it just does not work. Good debate.
Good debate.
All right, y'all. So y'all can you all hear me? All right, good debate. I end up voting negative. I think that the 2AR sort of assumes that there's not as much in the 2AR assumes that the 2NR is doing less work than it's doing. Like for instance, I think a lot of like the 2AR strategy hinges on the idea that extinction is like inconsequential under the AF framework. I think that the 2NR pretty explicitly warrants that. I mean, it isn't the greatest argument in the world, but it's just basically this argument that's like agency is also constrained by our existence. So if we all die, then no more agency, no more Kant. So like that I think is sufficient for the 2NR to like generate an impact under the AF framework. I also think that I don't really understand what this like framework pivot is in the 2AR, especially because I don't really get a warrant for why the ethical community is good in the pre-fiat debate sense. So I feel like that should be expanded upon a little bit more. But overall, I thought it was a good debate. Yeah.
I have one question. So I kind of like, I know I actually, I kind of like a breakdown of the 1AR. Was there a winning 2AR? Because I screwed up the 1AR like pretty badly. Was there a way I could win in the 2AR?
I'm honestly not the right person to ask. I think there's always a winning 2AR. I feel like you probably should have like read theory or something, introduced like some new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think there probably is like a conceivable winning 2AR. You just have to like sit on like one warrant why util fails probably.
That sounds good.
And then just say that it takes out everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably what I'd do. Like the aggregation fails argument.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you for judging.
Yeah, for
Quick question. Do you think the 2N, I think, I'm not sure, I might have just like floated around, but I think the 1AR conceded new app's bad. Would you have voted on it in the 2N considering how short and stupid it was?
Yeah, I'd probably vote on it.
Okay, cool. Thanks. That's all I had. Thank you all. Peace.
Yeah, bye.